And now we're along with our officials for today. And we've got Chris Rushin here in the middle. And on the outside, we've got Loyd Rice. And appreciate you guys coming in today.
Thanks for having us.
Sure. And each year we like to have some fun with our officials. And we have Officials Day on the last few roundtables here of the season. We've got you in here today. And, just keep it loose with the fans out there, just to give the experiences of officials year in and year out. And I tell you, I've got some stories going back many years about the games that you all do and the experiences y'all have across the state. I mean, I'm sure both of y'all have advanced on and done some state tournament play and even state finals play. So just the life of a referee, very intriguing.
Most of the time, from my experience, it's been about the camaraderie, the guys, especially in Chris's standpoint. I know the football crew. We don't get to do that quite as much on the basketball side of things, but I know the football crews pretty much stay together all year long, and those knuckleheads, they'll have to leave at like 2 in the afternoon. They'll tend to go a little farther, but it's Chris and Tim Harmon and Ben Godwin. I'll leave someone out, so I hate. And I know Mark Becker and his crew here in Dexter have been together forever. So yeah, you tend to build some stories that probably would need a 10, 15-second delay, which we don't have. But
we probably dropped some of those in there. But I will say this: the camaraderie that we have with the kids, though, the players and the coaches, are a lot of fun. I've had so much fun, and you'll hear the darndest things out of some of the players that you're out there with in between the plays.
Right.
I mean, Adam Grantham, the kid from Kennett, just an awesome baseball player, awesome football player. It was a lot of fun to be down there with him this year a couple of times. We had the privilege of doing the Crothersville Dexter football game.
Oh, yeah.
That I think you guys broadcast.
Sure. Yeah, game of the year.
And it was. It was. I mean, it was a blast to do that game. You got 2 good coaches. And speaking of coaches, like Aaron, it's always great whenever you're around coaches that know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And you love working with coaches like that. Guys that they can ask you for an explanation. You look at them, honestly tell them what you saw, what you thought happened, and they're good with it, and you go on. And the players, the way that they compart themselves on the field, the way that they act, the way that they interact with officials and with the other team as well. And that game, though, this year was just awesome. You had the Carr Trophy winner, and the quarterback for Dexter was a Carr finalist. That game, you never knew who was going to win that game. Yeah. And the kids were actually having fun playing that game at the same time.
Yeah, I think the final score was 57-56 Dexter.
It was nuts. It was crazy.
I think both teams had, I think, over 400 yards offense. It was insane.
Well, Chris and I were talking about that in back before, and it's 2 different games, obviously, but it's a lot the same people. It just tends to, at basketball, it's talking about coaches now, that you tend to have, and this is not an offense to anyone, but you tend to get a more, restrained or a mature level of coach night in, night out in football, because the guys are usually older. They've usually been around a staff or a staff situation. And so much of the time in basketball, I mean, a lot of these small schools will especially end up at, I mean, it's like, okay, you're the coach this year. And what that does, it's just fans and players especially, I always say, just absolutely inherit their coach's personality. So if he's nipping and chirping and whining and kind of always frustrated, you tend to get nipping and whining and chirping players. And what he's relating to about the Dexter football game, I'm thinking he's intending to say that those guys are going at it, they're being really physical, they're really mixing it up, and we got someone down, let's get out, let's go do it again. Let's go do it again.
Especially whenever you've got 2 coaching staffs like that and 2 teams like that, classy teams like that with great players on both sides. You know when you've been hit, even if you're a good player. And you look at the guy and you respect him. And there was a lot of times that night the team, both players from both teams would say, "Hey, great hit," and help the guy up that hit him. And it was that kind of, that's what you love. It gives me goosebumps to sitting here talking about it, because that's what you hope for. That's what you strive for. And that essentially, I think, is one of the lessons that high school sports we try to instill in our athletes, not only the male but female as well, that, hey, you want somebody to push you to be the best that you can possibly be.
Sure. And let's talk a little bit about both of y'all's backgrounds. And Chris, let's just talk about the sports that you currently officiate throughout the year.
Football, basketball. I was registered in baseball, but with my duties at the Boys and Girls Club, it's just it's not conducive to be able to get out of there by 3 o'clock. But I've been doing football. I think I'm coming up on this is either 19th or 20th year coming up. Basketball, I started it, got out of it for a little while, got back into it. I've been going for the last 5 years in basketball.
They've got a good football crew. Well respected. They called the Class 5 final a couple years ago, and
that's big.
That's
TV. You're on TV.
Absolutely.
Believe me, you think I look fat in this? Put stripes on.
It's a parallel too, and football guys and basketball guys and baseball guys. School people make great officials. You've just got a certain temperament and handling kids and thing about you that it really resonates across sports and even across gender, but especially across sports.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say these guys are the best girls officials that you might have coming off of a football field. And Coach Allen may like it. We want to get physical and mix it up, but
Chad would like that. No bone out, no foul. Okay,
But it is that they get to have a little more fun with it. We try to, on the basketball side, pair these guys together at least in twosomes or threesomes to get a chance to ride together, because that's important. Very, very few of them. I mean, I could count on one hand the guys that are doing it for the check. I mean, it's you don't do it for the money.
No.
I wouldn't do it without the money, but you just don't do it for the money. You really like the sport. You like the people involved, and that's the coaches and the school staffs too.
And you like the mission that it's all about too. I mean, the things that we are teaching are young people. I had a high school football coach, and a lot of people in Dexter remember him because he won a ton of games here too. Coach Thrower, I think, helped brought him in, and George Short. And Coach Short taught me so many life lessons. There's still so many things that Coach Short taught me whenever I was 15, 16, 17, and 18 years old that I instill it in the kids that I'm with at the Boys and Girls Club, whether I'm on the football field, whether I'm on a basketball court. There's so many of those things, and they're great life lessons that have helped me to get me to where I'm at today. And some of those kids, they need that. And those are tried and true sayings. Those are such true core values that need to be passed on to those other kids.
It's interesting you mentioned Coach Thrower and how that resonates, because I was actually calling the SEMO basketball game this year when they inducted him into the I guess the SEMO Hall of Fame. Would that be right this year? Coach Thrower and some of that bunch from that whatever team, 60, help me out there, whatever. And Dennis Meyer was in the crowd, who, when I first started officiating in about 90, Dennis is a brother of Dutch Meyer, who's called about 44 years of basketball in the area. And I guess Dutch and Dennis, who is a Poplar Bluff guy, or I assume so, Dennis was one of the guys that I first started refereeing with. So it was just kind of a whole neat circle of people that, especially in Loyd Rice's life, that I probably never crossed paths with without, getting to be involved. And I just really thought that was really neat. And then I look across the way, and there's Kelly Campbell's son, Corey, who's interning on the SEMO staff somehow. And it's just a great, neat circle of friends and acquaintances that you get to cross paths with, and people with similar background and interest. And that's about the 5th time this week I've heard Coach Thrower's name mentioned, as a matter of fact, just in conversation and talking about football and contact camp coming up and blah, blah, blah. So it's neat that you mentioned him.
Sure. And Loyd, you've been officiating, since 90, you said?
My high school coach, Ken Jackson, the year we graduated, came to Dexter as middle school assistant principal, I believe, and immediately needed some officials, so he tricked me into getting my license. Knew I was going to stay around the area. Got my license. It's a great story. I can remember getting up to Bell City for a junior high game in September of that year, and I had my uniform on. I was looking all good. I was tying my shoes, and Tom Britton, we were calling for Pete Ritter at the time, and obviously Pete was really desperate for another official. So he's like, Loyd, do you want to come up and referee this game? So I'm tying my shoes, and Tom looks over and is like, next time you might want to wear black socks. And, of course, I look down. I've got the whitest socks, and my pants are up. I'm like, okay. So my night's ruined because now I'm all jacked up about my socks being white. And then pay that forward, yes. Got started pretty much right out of high school, which a lot of guys do right in college. I know Jake Young this year, Tony Hill's coming back to Bloomfield to be superintendent. Her son Jake is a college freshman, going to be a college sophomore, and he's already working some football, JV type junior high games, and he's going to call some basketball for us. And it's just a great way to stay connected with a sport, especially if you just kind of want to be around it. You don't have to, be full time or some sort of high end to high level. Yeah. There's a lot of levels of it that start. If you worked around some of it. At co-ed and at, don't do any men's league unless you want to black eye.
That's where I got started. I got into officiating.
Well, then you got burned right away.
Doing the rec sports and
intramural.
Men's league. Yeah.
Intramurals is what I was trying to say.
Basketball is a contact sport.
The men's league stories are the classic ones.
Oh, yeah.
But those are for another day.
Right. And now you've moved on and not doing so much high school, but now moving into the college ranks.
Right.
And doing something there.
Wanting to stay connected.
Big time.
Wanting to stay connected with the high school game. And we kind of developed this SIBO assigning group where we can kind of pool the assignments into one person. Myself and Randy Winston kind of share those duties. We basically take the games. The coaches send schedules. We assign them. We try to manage people going here and there when there's issues or drama. We try to fix that and review plays and try to make the whole officiating program as a whole better. And I think we've accomplished some goals. I'm not going to measure that on a per-night basis, but across the course of a season and 2 seasons and now 5 in, I'd say we've made some marked improvements.
Well, and it's also just as the coaches are held accountable by their administrations, we are as well. And it is, if you're doing a good job, if you're working hard and doing the things that you're supposed to be doing out there, that gets around. If you're not doing the things that you're supposed to be doing, that gets around as well. And sometimes you'll get a call from the man, Loyd or Randy, and they'll counsel you on, hey, next time think about doing this, this, and this. And it's all in an effort to produce better officiating. To where the coaches who do that for a living, they don't do it just for the camaraderie. They do it for a living. And you're going out there and working for them as hard as you possibly can to let them know that, hey, we're going to be pros about this. You deserve professional officiating. And that's what you're getting.
Sure. And Loyd, talk a little bit more about SIBO and what that organization is and what it provides.
Well, what we do, we are basically an assigning group. You've got 2 heads of it, myself and Randy Winston, and it's just because it grew to that size. Originally, I was trying to manage it and do it all myself, but you just can't and do it effectively. But we basically assign and take care of all the officiating duties for the schools that choose to be a part of that. Now, pretty much in this area, from Jackson to Poplar Bluff and the entire Boot Heel, so we cut a pretty wide swath through this area. We basically assign and take care of all the officials. And taking care of means we assign them to the Dexter-Jackson game. And on a night-to-night basis, Tyler, we try to at least look at what's going on compared to the guys that are available and kind of match those people up. Just like in football, Mr. Minch isn't necessarily going to use his Class 5 state final crew last year on, just any old game. He's probably going to want to at least kind of see where that's going to lay in the world of games that are going on that night. And that doesn't just mean SEMO conference games. That could be a Stoddard County battle. That could be a Tri-County battle. I mean, as you're well aware, there is no – and I'll tell these guys, and it's funny that you say that because my guys from Cape, they have really been – there's been some eye-opening experience when they roll into the Risco-Clarkton affair or Campbell and Gideon. It's like, wow, okay. That's pretty intense.
Oh, yes. Tri-County is probably the most intense conference there is.
Kennett and Portageville. It's not always, Notre Dame and Cape Central or Notre Dame and Sykeston. It's, I mean, one of the funnest games I've ever got to officiate was when Kennett and Portageville would play, because Coach Bidwell would never start his season knowing that football would create him some difficulties until about January 6th, 7th, 8th, whichever that Friday is. Well, Kennett by then had normally always played 2, 3, 4 games, and so that was some, you talk about throwing it up and getting after it early in the year, it was on. And that's, kind of buried down there in the boot heel on a Friday night in early December. Those games are a lot of fun.
Those are the fun ones.
Really fun.
Those are the fun ones.
And again, it's not just a big school thing, although Sykeston Notre Dame is obviously pretty fun. And when we say fun, it's atmosphere. It's Dexter Caruthersville football. It's it's Dexter Notre Dame girls basketball. It's that whole atmosphere. It's the experience. It's the administration.
Go down and get you some Clarkton Risco on a Friday night. If you want to go, if your team's out of town and you're thinking, no, seriously, everybody ought to go experience it one time in the Han Gin down at Risco. Especially if Clarkton comes in town, because number one, it's going to be tough to get a seat. But number two, you will be amazed at how many people are there to help the officials.
That's right.
Okay?
Good, solid.
Making sure that they know their opinion on every single call. But it's a lot of fun. I mean, that's what it's all about.
We think, and we've just talked about this, but we think that small town winter rural life becomes so high school basketball oriented, that it's just almost maniacal. It's like Chris said, that it's just that energy that's in the building and stuff. Sometimes it goes too far. I mean, we've had issues, and we've tried to help.
Yep.
We try to help schools through those issues.
Yes.
And we've kind of had to make some decisions here or there about, hey, here's how it's got to be, because you want to conduct a professionalism level. Not only do I expect it of these guys, I expect it of myself, but in turn, we want to expect that of after all, it is a school function, and it is at some level, it's got to find its way back to
a learning environment.
and at the very, that highlighted paragraph in the business model probably says something to that effect. Why are we even doing this? Well, to enhance the educational experience.
Sure. And y'all have spoken about this here as we've been here talking, and about the experiences in the different gyms, the different schools, and I think that just goes to what Southeast Missouri is when it comes to high school athletics. You say we're a rural, small town region, and every little town still got schools, and it's got its basketball team, and the people in the communities rally behind their schools and their teams, and that's what makes Southeast Missouri is such a great tradition when it comes to high school athletics, especially when it comes to basketball. You talk about those small towns, and that's really what we're getting down to, is Southeast Missouri being so rich in tradition with high school athletics. Well,
and Northeast Arkansas as well, because you don't get to have this conversation in Western Kentucky or West Tennessee for the most part, do you? Because there's so many county schools, and you don't get to have the Risco events and what a great year, what a great run they've been on. You don't get to even have that conversation, and Bell City's had those opportunities, and my goodness, Scott Central goes without saying, but it's just a unique and great experience, because I sell sporting goods for my day job, and in a lot of parts of the state that we'll go to and talk to these guys, it is just a completely different atmosphere. Now, they play good football, and they can line it up and play some good basketball at the big school level, but that's why year after year, when our teams go to state, when they get done knocking heads down here and go through state, it's usually at that small school level, and even up through Sykeston's that Class 4 level now. Southeast Missouri will not only hold their own, but
how many times we said it over the years that more times than not the state championship was played in Southeast Missouri.
In a district
they
final.
might have called it the final up there, but the two best teams played down in Portageville, they played down at Kennett, they played at Charleston, they played at New Madrid. That's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's gone back for years. I remember, looking back and looking at the 80s, it was, Charleston, Malden, and New Madrid.
Yep.
That was some fun times, yeah.
Yep.
Or Scott Central beating out Richland and some of those guys through the years. There is no question that had Richland not had to play Scott Central in a district final or a sectional, it was called at the time.
And Chris, you can probably speak to this more so than us. Basketball, Southeast Missouri is going to represent a state Final Four year in and year out consistently. Now, football, it's a different story. There's not a whole lot of football teams here in Southeast Missouri. Of course, you got to have the enrollment and the school size to handle that kind of sport. But and our good teams that come from here, they get up and they run into these St. Louis teams in football, and it seems like as far as they can go is about the quarterfinal round. So maybe you can speak to what a different environment
that is. I don't know about the why.
Well, I can assume.
Every year at the conference banquet, I talk about 1983. Mm-hmm. 1983 was the last time that Southeast Missouri had a state high school football champion. Mm-hmm. Do you guys know what school it was? Not very many people do.
No.
You want to guess?
Cape Central.
No, it's Chaffee.
Wow.
It was Chaffee. Chaffee was the last high school state championship in Southeast Missouri. And I don't know. I do know that I remember whenever Kent Gibbs took the 84 Hayti Indians up to Kansas City, they had a hidden ball trick play, and there was an inadvertent whistle. And his kid's going down the sideline at Arrowhead Stadium for what would have been the winning score.
Wow.
Okay? And they ended up losing that game. And I thought that Gibby's team 2 years ago had a heck of a shot of making a good run at it. But, that's where and you can use all the axioms, you can use all the cliches in the world, but they really mean something. If you have one bad day, and, they didn't have their best day, and that team was able to come back and beat them a couple of years ago. The why we haven't, I don't know. And I say we because I'm vested in that because of the years that I put in officiating and being with some of those kids and seeing them from time to time.
I could probably just speak from my experience. I went to school at New Madrid. We always had a great football team, and we'd go far in the state tournaments. And I could just tell that we're bringing 30 kids on the sideline. We've got 30, and team up the way and say the quarterfinal, semifinal rounds got 60 kids, and no matter, we'd always have a good handful of just all American athletes, basically, almost to that point. But the difference is, this player's playing quarterback, and also he's playing either linebacker or safety on defense, and then the good running back's playing running back, and he might be playing cornerback on the other side. So it's like, you get those 4 or 5 just great athletes, and they've got to do so much for their teams in such an area like this. Like Dexter this past year, you had Cody Stevens playing quarterback.
Yep.
He was their safety. I mean, he was
same thing with Adam Grantham down at
same thing. So I think from that point, there's more players to spread out, in football and some of those other schools up north, and then our players down here, they're headlined with big time athletes, but they have to do so much. And in football, it just it's hard to do so much with just a few players in that regard. That's my opinion. But
and you take Thayer. Thayer went to, I want to say they went to back-to-back state championships, and they scored on the last play of the game. All the kid had to do was kick the extra point, and Thayer wins the state championship. Kid kicked the ball, and it didn't even get inside of the goal line pylons. That's how far off he was on that. Wow. Thayer ends up losing it. Well, you have a bad day. You have a bad break go against you. And that's happened from time to time. And that's their 1A football, farthest that you're ever going to get from a private school setting, okay? Mm-hmm. Billy Weber's the head coach over there, oddly enough. Not Coach Weber's son, different guy. But sorry I did that to you. But Thayer's great program. I mean, I don't know why. I don't know why. I just keep thinking we're finally going to get the breaks one of these days. I think that as far as winning that state championship is that lets you know just how special whenever you do finally win one of those, that how special it is and how incredibly talented and special those kids are on that team that are playing.
Yeah. A lot of it out of our region too, Tyler, especially at the football level, is because so many of the small schools don't play football. Whereas in Oklahoma, if you've got 30 kids in the high school, they're playing.
Oh, it's so much different just over in Arkansas.
It's a good point. The rectors of the world and everyone down there, Piggott, they are going to play football. Whereas up here, our smaller schools, Bernie, Bloomfield, Puxico, nobody plays football per se. So it does at some level resonate as a numbers game.
Sure. Yeah. And it's just hard. That's hard to budget football.
Well,
I'm for it. I think everyone should play football, Chris. Well, just from a learning experience.
And I used to do a lot of work down at Twin Rivers whenever I first got out of college, and the one thing that I did notice down there, and I've seen it in the spring, in fall ball down at Campbell with baseball, is that a lot of these kids, their parents own or work on farms. And basketball, absolutely. The tractors are in the barns and they're in the sheds and they don't have to work in the fields. But you get into harvest time, and a good basketball friend of ours, Lee Jones, we'll only see him, we might not see him for 3 weeks at a time, and he's sitting in a tractor for 16, 18 hours a day. And it's the same thing with these kids. And for years they haven't played because they were expected to help out on the farm. I don't know if it's so much the case now. Then you have tradition plays into it, and you also have some schools that said, hey, we never want to mess with football.
Right.
I know that Donovan for the last couple of years has talked about trying to start a football program. They had football back in the early 80s, okay? Where did Roger go to high school at?
Roger Sledge?
No, Patillo.
Oh, gosh, I don't know.
They used to have football. Big Country played baseball there as well. I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of that school. But they had football. In fact, Roger Patillo was an all-conference defensive back for 3 years. They only had football 4 years at that school, okay? And it's not Risco. It's help me out. I'm sorry.
Where location?
It's the cleanest gym in southeast Missouri.
Gideon?
Gideon had football. They were in the Little Six
Really?
once upon a time.
You're kidding me.
No.
Hey, I think I remember
football.
that.
Wow.
They got some pictures up in their
Yep. They used
case.
to play football.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Who knew?
Yep.
Well, and it, especially in this day in the cleanest gym in southeast Missouri.
It is. It is. I never get to see Jackson or Kay. I didn't even know they had basketball programs until I got on this show.
It's not a sport that you're exactly going to roll out and say, hey, let's start football, because of facilities, because of funding, because of a lot of coaching staffs.
Another thing is that Charleston was going through, and you go through these waves and you see it. Charleston had some great football teams back in the 70s, back in the 80s. Trent Lane is one of the best football players ever to come out of southeast Missouri. He works for the Missouri Department of Conservation now. But Charleston went through a time there to where that they were having trouble having 20 guys on the sideline. And they have finally they got a great football coach down there now, a young guy.
Coach Blackman.
Yep. Does a tremendous job with those kids. The numbers are starting to pick up, but it's getting those kids to come out. Because let's be honest, it's hard to get 60, 70 kids to come out in the middle of August whenever it's 100 degrees outside, okay? It's a lot easier to sit at home and play those video games. But to be able to make that kind of commitment, because in today's, the way athletics has evolved, you have to lift year-round. You have to stay in shape year-round. to be able to play high school football. And if you don't, you will go out there and get beat up if you play against somebody that has made that commitment to that.
It's turned into Football Roundtable, but
I'm sorry.
Well, you see, when you talking football, he thinks he's got an insight. Record head size at SEMO football at some level. It's some legendary tale of size 8.5.
I got to go 30 miles to get insulted
but anyway,
cable television.
Had to hunt the whole area, the whole entire region for a special sized helmet. But also enrollments have affected that, and I know that Charleston's enrollment is not what it was. Kennett, because Randy can share those numbers with you, and they just blew me away. And this is not even going to be right, but it was like, at one time we were 700 enrollment in high school, and now we're 400.
Yep.
Something in that, that's completely don't bank on those figures, but that's a significant decrease over the course of, my gosh, 20 years. And you're talking about a lot. Portageville has seen those same numbers. Malden has. A lot of especially our Boot Hill communities. And I think it has to do with the farming economy and some things that have just changed over time. But that's an interesting factor in,
surely,
in the number of.
Just for every 100 kids, you're probably going to get 2 that are exceptional athletes. At least 2. Well, multiply that times 3. There's 6 kids. You're talking about Cody Stevens' offense, defense. You take, you can just keep going and going and going.
Right.
On that.
Right. Let's talk about, for all of those out there that because basically anyone that's getting into officiating, they're enthusiasts in sports. They enjoy being around it. So for anyone out there that would be interested in getting into officiating, I know it may be different when it comes to football, basketball, baseball, and just speak to that.
Have actively been on a recruiting campaign. As a matter of fact, I really need some officials, and I'm going to call it this Highway 60 belt. We don't have a lot of guys. Jay Piles here at Dexter, and I'll leave someone out if I start naming names, so I'm not going to. But we are real limited in the number of officials we have. Dexter, Sykeston, and then South. All of those Boot Hill games, great. Hayti, Caruthersville, you talk about the Battle of the Boot Hill. When they put that inside a gymnasium, it is just outstanding. And we've got to cover that with usually Cape and or Poplar Bluff guys, because we've got about 3 active officials in kind of the entire Boot Hill. Now we're starting to fix that. Kevin Lawrence has come back on, and I think a lot of that is hopefully been because of the efforts of SEBO and assigning, but I'm on an active recruiting mission. I talked to Josh Miller this week. Maybe this will shame him into doing it, or Stan Elfrink. There are some guys in this area in Sykeston that if you're knowing them, we're ready, because we're going to assign junior high games. We're going to be able to bring them along the right way. And I've basically copied that from the football way of doing business. These guys are on a crew, so they know when they've got new guy over here, Tyler. Hey, Tyler, why don't you come be on our football crew? We'll bring you in. We're going to work with you on JV, on 8th grade games, on all that during the week stuff. And on Friday night, go with us. Come along with us. You'll love it. It'll be great. And you tend to inherit people because of that, and they get good in a hurry. And again, I love Darren Shipman we've picked up this year, former coach at the junior high and assistant high school level. It's a real easy segue into officiating if you've had any relationship with it at all, whether it be football, baseball, umpiring, or even better, former coaches. Former coaches make great. You've been doing it anyway. You've been refereeing all those years anyway, so you might as well get paid for it. And a lot with the same with the football guys. They kind of go inherit their own and take care of their own. Chris was talking about having to, supposedly the business model ideally is to take a great crew and then bust it up and then make 2 good crews that become great. Yeah. They won't do that because they're too selfish, but in the meantime, they can hopefully bring some guys along and get another crew started. Right. And you've got to be able to work with good officials to be any good. Lee Jones's nephew, Ryan Miller, brand new, 3 years out of high school, even Twin Rivers kid. He really was able to catch on to it easy. But my gosh, he's calling games with Uncle Lee and Tim Harmon and Randy Winston, and so yeah, he's got a distinct advantage in that, he's going to be able to pick it up from your partners.
And I can say this just from the basketball angle of it, is that it's so much better now than the way that it used to be. A lot of times, the way that things used to be is that you had established basketball officials, and they would go out and they would book all of their own games.
Right.
And for a new guy trying to break in and get in, it was so incredibly hard because a guy that's been calling 15 years, well, I don't want this new guy around me. I'm not going to let him do my JV game. I'm not going to be, this, that, and the other. Nowadays, the way that they'll put the schedule together is that you'll first of all jump in and start doing some JV games, and then you'll watch the varsity game. And then they'll put you on a crew with 2 guys that are going to be able to help you along, try to get your feet up underneath you to where that you're able to call. And, if you're putting in the commitment, if you're going to the camps, if you're doing the things that you're supposed to do, you're going to get some games.
There's no question.
You're going to get some games. You're going to get a volume of games that comes in. It's the same thing with football. We're constantly looking for guys because there's Friday nights that I'd like to go watch the Mules play this one time this year. I've mentored a kid for a while. I'd like to watch him play on senior night. Well, that night, you want a good guy to take your place on the crew. So, we're constantly looking for officials. It's one of the funnest things that I've ever done.
It is. I agree.
I've been through it. I've got to see a lot of things, and it's as close to playing as you're ever going to get.
I like it even better because I think I'm better at it than I was as a player, and so insert your good refereeing jokes there. But I've had more success at the officiating level than I did have personally at the playing level.
Yep.
Plus, when you're 17, you're basically a knucklehead. You don't know any better, so you're just bebopping through, going through the motions.
Yeah, you wish you knew then.
Yeah, exactly. Have some of that back. Sorry about all that, Coach Jackson, but I would like to, parlay and share that all that I can, and that's my real intent with this. It's not a cash cow. Heather would laugh at the amount of income against the time put into it. It doesn't add up, and again, you can't make it add up numbers wise. So if you're an attorney or if you're an accountant or if you're too much of a thinking guy, might not be your bag.
Not a whole lot of ROI on this, okay?
But
return on investment,
yeah.
all right? There wasn't anything malicious about that at all.
We hope at the end, and one of the other things I told you, Tyler, if we're going long, again, it's your show, so we'll keep doing what we're doing. But it's I always think back to that Christmas tournament game when Scott Cruz is chasing Bobby Godwin off of the court, or when that ball's coming. Well, that was at Bobby Godwin too. So there's 2. I'm teasing. I'm hoping at some point he gets to watch this. But behind the intensity or the atmosphere, or even the Jim Hall story where the official said, "Get off the floor. You're relegated to the bench," because for a year or 2 there, once you had a T called, you had to stay on the bench. And at some point, Coach Hall, I think, now this is the story, and it's a good one, he ends up squatting on the bench, the Dexter Jim, squatting on the bench so he could stand, and he would stand on the bench. Well, he was on the bench. He wasn't. Or Dave Pearson going up into the stands, or, a lot of funny things to look back at now, but taking that away, Chris also does run the Boys and Girls Club. We've got a lot of really neat professionals during day jobs. We've got Highway Patrol. Todd Turlington's had about 86 Dexter games in the last 2 years. They're probably so tired of seeing him, but he's a very well respected highway patrolman. Matt
Yeah.
Keeney's a highway patrolman. Clark Parrott is a highway patrolman, and the new, I call him the new Sergeant Joe Matthews.
Jim Gerber over at Bluff with the police department.
I mean,
there's
really
tons. It comes from
solid
everybody.
people. You know, Chris, again, the Boys and Girls Club and this whole SEMO conference banquet that he runs. We've just got a lot of really good people involved that you really, as a young male, female, my goodness, do we need some female officials like crazy?
Yeah.
You kind of write your ticket there, but really good people, and for the most part, really solid professionals, and can help you in some other facets of life. I mean, there are a lot of connections and friendships, and some of this stuff we shared earlier can be made just because you're bumping around a bunch of, you know, bankers and attorneys and, you know, highway patrolmen.
That's the thing that you
Probably
always
kept Jay Cookson out of jail more times than one.
He said that. Okay. But you know, there's a lot of character that's revealed
It's even better.
on a court or on a field or on a diamond, and it's also by officials at the same time. If you make a mistake, own up to it. It's the same thing in life. If you know you're right, stick to your guns. Be fair. Work hard. You know, it's simple things. That it's kind of like the guy said, Robert Fulgham, all I ever needed to learn in kindergarten. It's the same thing for us.
Point. Show up on time.
Show up on
Yeah.
time. Be on time.
Call your
Be
partner.
professional.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay? And, you know, and then whenever you work with those people on a field or on a diamond or on a court, and then you're like, man, I'd like to do some business with that guy, you know, because of the way that he handles himself out there. I bet he deals in business the exact same way.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's great networking. And, I mean, it's a ton of fun. I mean, it is so much fun.
Yeah, and you got a great tradition as we've spoken to, and the camaraderie that you all guys have, and it's kind of fun us doing the games that we have. We have fun with you all
Right.
at the games as well, and it's just a great atmosphere. And you know, the fans are going to be fans, and you know, if they see you the next time, they'll probably just throw a jab at you, and you know, it's all good fun.
And again, Bobby gets to share most of those because so many people end up at his golf course. I don't get necessarily to see all the fans at the Twin Rivers Dexter game. Bobby gets to see 80% of them back at the golf course at some point that next year or summer. So he tends to be able to get out of most of those jams, just personality-wise. But again, we are so actively pursuing people, young people. It doesn't have to be young. I mean, you can be a young official and be starting at 45 years old.
You got the guy from
Profession
Cape.
change, yeah.
The guy from Cape is
awesome.
just getting into it, and I think he's 50. And seriously.
Bill Bonney, one of our Cape basketball officials, you know, short Bill. Bill's calling an active SEC baseball schedule. He'll be all over the SEC, and it's not minor league. What is it that the minors play? Baseball.
Independently.
In some sort of independent league baseball. Really, really cool connections and really neat people beyond, you know, who you're screaming at and are thinking are just a complete idiot.
Yeah, but all good fun with officials, and we try to get some officials on each year to just basically give out the experiences. I know y'all got plenty of stories, but also just kind of give, you know, the ins and outs of being an official and how some people can get in if they're interested. I know y'all's always looking for officials and across different sports. So
Absolutely.
we try to be as much informative as fun here with the officials.
And especially at the baseball level, and I have nothing to do with baseball, and Chris really doesn't, but I know those guys are just screaming for baseball officials because of the time of day. I mean, you could literally get your license, and it's an open book test. You go to misha.org, take the test, and I promise you will have baseball games next year because of rainouts and because of softball officials the same way. I mean, they literally are in such a bind for those guys. They're so needed. You will work baseball and softball games instantly.
Right.
You get on the field quick.
Absolutely. And that's not always a good thing, ideally, but, you know, whatever. It's got to be what it's got to be,
right.
Because of the time of day those games start. But
You have so many high school fields that don't have lights. That's one thing that we're fortunate enough with football and with basketball. Hey, we have lights. We can play at night.
Right.
But, Most baseball games start at either 4:30, or 5 o'clock, and it's tough to get away.
Right.
We will bring you along. We won't bury you. And that's probably the fear factor with basketball officiating, because you were either that guy playing or that guy in the stands, or just kind of witness to the the madness that is Friday night basketball in Southeast Missouri in January, February. But it's not nearly as bad as it may seem, and we'll bring you along.
Yeah, that's what's good about your organization there at SIBO that y'all participate in. Y'all mainly run 3-man crews a lot of times now, so you get to share a lot of the burden.
That's right.
A lot of the it kind of spreads out, so it's not so much on you.
Well, and put you with the right guys.
Right.
Yeah, putting you with the right crew, that training ground is key.
Sure. All right. Well, we appreciate you guys coming on today
Awesome.
and sharing with us, and we'll be looking forward to another season. Football's going to be here before you know it.
I know. Gotta start hitting the road. I gotta get rid of
It's basically a sport that has moved a full month early. All the July camps are now in June. We see this at work. All our quote-unquote June deliveries people need in May, and it's because of the contact days that the coaches can have with the kids. I mean, Missouri has really caught themselves up in the football world.
It has.
Finally. I say
Yes.
finally. I don't have a long history in it, but they have seemingly caught up to getting these football staffs, coaches, schools what they need to do, and I think it's starting to resonate in wins and losses and players.
Well, you're just having a better level of football too.
Yeah.
Better level.
Yeah.
Thanks,
So
Tyler.
we'll be looking forward to another year starting in the fall.
Thanks for
football
inviting us
going
on.
through basketball. Sure,
It's fun.
and we like to have some fun with our officials and give the viewers out there, just a kind of inside look at the role of an official throughout the year and across many sports. So we like to have a lot of fun with it. We'll be seeing you guys this next year with another great season. So
Absolutely.
appreciate y'all
Thank
coming
you.
in today.
Thank you.
All right. Chris Rushin, Loyd Rice, your officials here in Southeast Missouri. Go easy on them next year. They're getting better each year,
Good
so
people.
just remember
Solid.
that. Yeah, they're solid. They're getting better, so ease up on them. All right, well, we're going to take a break.